Hello everyone. Welcome back to the CATIA Learning Path series. In this episode, we are going to explore another useful toolbar available inside the Sketcher workbench. This is the Visualization Toolbar. As the name suggests, this toolbar mainly controls how the sketch and surrounding three-dimensional geometry are displayed while we are working inside Sketcher. When we create a sketch on a complex part, the surrounding three-dimensional geometry can sometimes make the sketch difficult to see or difficult to select. The Visualization Toolbar gives us different ways to simplify this working environment. So let us first understand the main purpose of these commands, and then we will move directly into CATIA. Cut part by sketch plane. Let us start with one of the most useful commands in this toolbar. This is called Cut Part by Sketch Plane. Suppose I have created a sketch somewhere inside or through this solid part. When I enter Sketcher, some portion of the three-dimensional material may block my view of the geometry that I actually want to reference. If I activate Cut Part by Sketch Plane, CATIA temporarily cuts the visible part at the active sketch plane. You can see that the material on one side of the sketch plane is now hidden. This makes the sketching area much easier to understand. It can also expose edges that were previously hidden behind the solid geometry. Now I can use these visible edges as references while creating my sketch. One important thing to understand is that CATIA is not actually cutting or modifying the solid. Next, we have a few commands related to Constraint Visibility. These allow us to control whether different types of constraints are displayed inside the sketch. For example, we can control the visibility of diagnostics, dimensional constraints, and geometrical constraints. Let us say this sketch contains many dimensions and geometrical constraints. As the sketch becomes more complicated, all these symbols and dimensions can make the screen crowded. Using these visualization controls, we can temporarily hide the information that we do not currently need. For example, I can hide dimensional constraints while concentrating only on geometry. Or I can hide geometrical constraint symbols to make the sketch visually cleaner. Again, the constraints themselves are not deleted. We are only controlling their visibility. Once required, we can display them again. This can be particularly useful when working with large and heavily constrained sketches. Now let us move to the Visu 3D subtoolbar. This mainly controls how the three-dimensional geometry surrounding our active sketch is displayed. We have three main options here: Usual, Low Light, and No 3D Background. Let us understand them one by one. The first one is Usual. This is the normal or default visualization mode. When Usual mode is active, the surrounding three-dimensional geometry remains visible while we are working inside Sketcher. So here you can see my current sketch as well as the complete three-dimensional model behind it. This is useful when I want to understand the sketch in relation to the surrounding part geometry. For normal sketch creation, this may be perfectly sufficient. The next option is Low Light. Let me activate it. You can immediately see the difference. The surrounding three-dimensional geometry becomes visually subdued or grayed out. However, the active sketch remains clearly visible. There's another important difference. The background three-dimensional geometry cannot be selected while this mode is active. So I can still see the part and use it as a visual reference, but I can concentrate on the sketch without accidentally selecting surrounding three-dimensional elements. This can be very useful when the model contains a lot of geometry. Instead of completely hiding the model, Low Light keeps the context visible but puts the focus on the active sketch. The third option is No 3D Background. When I activate this mode, all surrounding three-dimensional geometry disappears. Only the current sketch remains visible. Even geometry that may be coplanar with the sketch is removed from the background display. This gives us the cleanest possible sketching environment. Suppose I have a very complicated part, and I only want to concentrate on the two-dimensional profile. In that situation, No 3D Background can be extremely useful. Now let us move to the 2D Visualization subtoolbar. This gives us more detailed control over the background geometry visible while working inside Sketcher. Here we have several different modes. They may initially look confusing because some of them appear very similar, but the difference is mainly based on two questions. Can I see the background geometry? And can I select the background geometry? The first option is Pickable Visible Background. When this mode is active, geometry outside the active sketch plane remains visible with normal intensity. And importantly, that geometry can also be selected. So if I need to select some background geometry as a reference, this mode can be useful. For example, I may want to project or reference an existing element from the surrounding model. In that situation, keeping the geometry both visible and selectable is useful. The next option is, again, No 3D Background. When this mode is active, geometrical elements outside the sketch plane are hidden. This gives us a cleaner sketcher environment. The idea is similar to the No 3D Background option that we discussed earlier. Next, we have Unpickable Background. Here, the surrounding geometry remains visible with normal intensity. However, we cannot select it. This is useful when we still need the three-dimensional geometry for visual reference, but we do not want CATIA to accidentally select those background elements. This is particularly useful in complicated models where many edges, faces, and curves overlap around the sketch. Next is Low-Intensity Background. When this mode is active, background geometry remains visible but appears with reduced intensity. Next, we have Unpickable Low-Intensity Background. This combines both behaviors. The background geometry is displayed with reduced intensity, and at the same time, the background geometry cannot be selected. The final option is Lock Current Viewpoint. This command allows us to lock the current viewing orientation while a visualization mode is active. Let me first position my sketch in the orientation that I want. Now I will activate Lock Current Viewpoint. The current viewpoint is locked. This can be useful when we want to prevent accidental changes to the viewing orientation while working on the sketch. When I no longer need the locked orientation, I can deactivate the command. This is especially helpful when precision or consistency of the working viewpoint is important. Using the right visualization mode helps keep the screen cleaner, prevents accidental selections, and makes sketching easier. Thank you for watching. Keep practicing, and I will see you in the next episode of the CATIA Learning Path series.